sky me, where brains go to broadcast.
How often have you poured hours of real effort and research into a report or an essay, only to have this nagging feeling that your reader just skimmed the intro and then forgot your main point the second they finished?
It happens all the time. It's really the Achilles heel of communication, you know? We spend maybe 80% of our energy on the middle part, the body, the evidence.
Right, the guts of it.
Exactly. But the introduction and the conclusion, they're the frame. They're the first and last impression, and frankly, they decide whether the whole thing is remembered at all.
We have to stop treating them like formalities. They aren't just filler, they're strategic tools. They're the sales pitch.
Sales pitch. I like that. Let's run with that idea. Think of your entire piece of writing like a storefront window.
Okay.
You have, 30 seconds of a reader's time? That's your introduction. And in that window, you have to attract them to your subject, the goods inside. So they'll come into the discussion and, ultimately let you make the sale.
Which is convincing them of your thesis.
Precisely. If that window is dusty or vague, they're just going to walk right past.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit. Before we get into all the techniques, what is the absolute non-negotiable purpose of that first paragraph? What must it do?
It has to do 3 crucial things, and often in just a few sentences. First, it establishes your voice and your tone.
Your attitude, basically.
Your attitude, exactly. Are you academic? Provocative. Second, it introduces the general topic so the reader knows what they're getting into. And third, the most important part, it states the central thesis. That one single argument the whole piece supports.
And if you miss on those?
Then you get a dull, disjointed opening that guarantees your reader checks out. If they don't know who you are, what you're talking about, or what you're trying to prove, you've lost them before you've even started.
So the real challenge isn't just stating your topic. It's moving the reader smoothly from some big general idea to your very specific argument. That can feel like a huge leap.
It is a huge leap, and that's where structure comes in. There's a brilliant strategy for this, and it's called the funnel technique.
The funnel technique.
Okay. It's the perfect mechanism for managing the reader's focus. It prevents that, that jarring feeling when a piece just dives straight into a complex argument with no setup.
It's like a zoom lens for your brain.
That's a great way to put it.
So let's get a little technical. If I'm picturing this funnel, this inverted triangle, how does the information actually flow through it?
It's a very systematic progression. You start at the top, the whitest part, that's your broad general statement.
The hook.
The hook, your opening salvo, it's designed to grab attention on a big scale. Then you move to the middle of the funnel, the general introductory remarks. This is where you gradually narrow the focus.
You're giving background, maybe defining terms.
Exactly. Context that leads right to your topic. And then at the very bottom, the narrowest point of the funnel, you have the thesis, the specific argument that everything else is built on.
I really like that you separated out the introductory remarks. It's not just filler, it's the bridge.
It is the bridge.
It stops you from going from, the world is a complex place, straight to, here's my specific argument about 18th century treaties.
Yes. Without that middle section, the thesis just feels like it comes out of nowhere. It's too specific, too soon.
But let's go back to the top of that funnel.
Yeah.
Starting broad, but still being engaging. That's the tricky part, isn't it? This is where it gets really interesting. What methods can we actually use to capture that interest right away?
You have to have a dynamic opening. The goal is to get the reader curious, maybe even personally invested. A bland statement like, the topic of global economics is complex, it's a non-starter.
So give us the menu. What are the options here?
Certainly. A really powerful one is the emotional or logical appeal. You speak directly to a reader's feelings or their sense of reason.
Like what?
So if you're writing about education funding, you could start with something like, every student who walks into a classroom is a future taxpayer. Why are we treating their education as an expense instead of an investment?
Ah, so you're immediately giving the reader a stake in the argument. What if you want to be a bit more aggressive?
Then you can go with provocation. You start with a startling question or a really strong, maybe even controversial opinion.
I like that.
For a piece on cryptocurrency regulation, you might open with, the most dangerous regulator is the one that moves the slowest. We're letting innovation flee overseas while we debate semantics.
Okay, that's effective. But how do you make sure a provocative statement doesn't just alienate your reader from the start? Where is that line?
That's the key, isn't it? The provocation has to be relevant to your thesis. It can't just be shock for shock's sake. It has to set up a problem that your thesis is going to solve. You're basically saying, there's a fight here, and I'm ready to take a side.
Relevant conflict. I like that.
Yeah.
What about for the people who prefer hard numbers?
Data and facts. Absolutely. Opening with a startling statistic gives your essay immediate authority. So instead of remote work is changing, you could say, a recent study found employees working remotely 3 days a week reported a 40% drop in burnout, yet fewer than 15% of companies have adopted this model.
That immediately creates tension. It makes me ask, why is there that gap between the data and the action?
Precisely. And finally, you can always use narrative or imagery. Open with a powerful quote, a striking image, or even a brief personal story.
You're telling a story to introduce the topic.
Yes. For a piece on intellectual property you could start with. In 1983, a garage inventor was told his patent was meaningless. Today, that patent is the foundation of a $5 billion industry.
Okay, quick tip. What if I'm having an off day, I'm struggling to come up with a provocative statement. Is there a quick fix?
There is. If you're stuck, look for a relevant, attention-grabbing quote from a historical or significant figure. It gives you built-in credibility. Just make sure it actually applies to your specific angle.
And we can't forget the words themselves. Diction, right? Your word choice across all of these techniques is so critical.
It's the delivery mechanism for everything we're talking about. You have to use words that create images, that express action. The decision was bad is boring. The decision ground the project to a halt, makes you feel something.
And crucially, all these rules, the funnel, provocation, they apply directly to speeches and presentations too, don't they?
Absolutely. The intro to a speech has the exact same purpose as an essay. You have a tiny window to grab your audience. That funnel approach and those provocative statements work just as well when you're speaking.
Okay, so let's shift gears to the conclusion. This is the part writers so often rush, they feel like the hard work's done, but it's the last thing people read. Why is it just as vital as the beginning?
Because a hasty, sloppy ending can completely undermine an otherwise fantastic essay. If your conclusion feels disorganized or has loose ends, it unsettles the reader. It makes them doubt the entire argument you just spent pages building.
You have to give them closure.
You must. The core principle is that the conclusion has to conform to everything you've already said. It has to tie it all together.
So, structurally, how does that work? If the introduction is a funnel that narrows the focus, what's the conclusion?
It's the inverse funnel, a perfect mirror image. It reverses the direction. You're maneuvering the reader back out of the essay toward broader thinking, but only after you've synthesized everything.
Okay, let's detail that structure because the order is so important.
It is. You start by paraphrasing your thesis. It's a restated thesis.
No, you're not just copying and pasting it.
No, never. You're restating the core argument, but now with the added weight of all the evidence you've just presented. It signals to the reader that things are wrapping up.
So wait, what's the difference between restating the thesis and the next step, which is reviewing the main points? Isn't that repetitive?
That is a great question, and it's where people get tripped up. The restated thesis is your specific claim. The second step, to review main points, is where you briefly assemble the categories of evidence you used to prove that claim.
Ah, so you're reminding them how you proved it.
Exactly. You might say something like, as shown through the case studies and the recent survey data, you're quickly validating the thesis one last time.
I see. Thesis first, then a quick reminder of the proof.
Precisely. And then you move to the third stage, general concluding remarks. This is the inverse of your opening hook. You broaden the focus, discuss the implications of your findings, and lead the reader out with a new perspective.
That symmetry is so powerful. And there's a practical tip about the actual length, too.
Yes. For a real sense of balance, try to make your introduction and conclusion roughly the same length. If your intro is 10% of the essay and your conclusion is just 2 sentences, the reader feels cheated. That parallelism strengthens the whole message.
Okay, so when we're crafting that final sentence, that very last impression, we want to go out with a bang, not a whimper. How do we make sure it's memorable?
You need a final sentence that really resonates. There are 2 techniques that are especially powerful for ending memorably.
Let's hear them.
The first is the final emphatic statement. This is a strong, definitive closing that makes the reader keep thinking about your essay's implications. It often boils down the entire meaning into one sharp sentence.
Give me an example.
If you wrote about, say, artificial intelligence, your last line could be, the age of thinking machines isn't coming, it's here, and we're just now realizing the rules were written by the machines themselves.
Wow, high stakes, high impact. Okay, and the second method.
The challenge. This has probably been the most active way to end. You directly challenge the reader to change their thoughts or their actions based on the evidence you've provided.
I love that. It empowers the reader. Now, let's talk about the mistakes. The potholes to avoid in the conclusion. These are critical.
Absolutely critical. First, avoid what I call trite phrases, things like in conclusion or in summation.
They're so redundant.
They're redundant and they just scream, I'm out of ideas. Second, and this is a huge one for rushed writers, avoid introducing new material.
Ugh, yes. It's so unsettling as a reader.
It is, because it breaks the promise you made in the introduction. The conclusion is for synthesis, not expansion. You leave the reader wanting more information that you can't provide.
And I've seen this next one just destroy an otherwise great argument. Avoid changing your thesis.
Yes. After you've spent paragraphs defending one point of view, if you suddenly soften it or say, well, the other side has a point too, the reader feels like you've wasted their time on an argument you didn't even fully believe yourself.
And finally, a simple one. Don't apologize.
Correct. Avoid apologies or disclaimers. Don't say this topic is complex or I hope I've covered the basics. Stand by your thesis. Your confidence in the language is just as important as your evidence.
And again, this all applies to presentations and public speaking too, that inverse funnel structure.
It does. A great oral report does the exact same thing. Restate your purpose, review your main points, and then end with that powerful, emphatic statement that leaves a lasting impression long after everyone's left the room.
So what does this all mean? To really master communication, you have to master the beginning and the end. Introductions use that funnel technique, moving from a broad hook, like a startling fact, down to your specific thesis.
And conclusions use the inverse funnel. You start with that restated thesis, and then you broaden out to those memorable closing remarks, either an emphatic statement or a direct challenge. And both require carefully chosen words.
If the introduction makes a promise about scope and tone, the conclusion has to deliver closure on that promise. It ensures your work is balanced, coherent, and true from start to finish.
Your writing has to be a complete closed loop.
That's something to think about. Think about the last article or report you read that really stuck with you, the one you were still mulling over the next day. How did the writer hook you? And more importantly, how did they end it? Did they leave you with a challenge? How can you apply the power of that emphatic challenge to your very next email or presentation to make sure your message isn't just heard, but actually acted upon? That's the real power of structure.
Cascade me where brains go to broadcast. Cascade me, knowledge speaks, tuition sleeps.